So I'm with the State Water Survey at the University of Illinois, use my clicker. And so we're funded, this whole program is funded through RCAP, the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, which is a national nonprofit. And that's the reason why we're all here. We have all this to do. And one of the things that we've built through that program with a team of experts is a well assessment tool. And it's really much like a sanitary survey, if you know what those are. And the idea is to evaluate the vulnerability of a well owner's water system. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm not going to go into the details of what's in it. If you're interested in that, I talked about it at the 2017 conference. And if you go to privatewellclass.org/conference, it'll show you the 2019 stuff, but down in the text there's a link to the 2017 conference. And on that's a link to the YouTube page where all of the talks for the 2017 conference are listed. So you can watch the entire conference if you're interested. And one of them is me talking about the assessment tool that we had developed back then. So a little bit about the water survey. Most people have not heard of us. We're really just like a state geological survey. Illinois is fortunate. We have the only water survey in the country. I think maybe Oklahoma just started one. But the Geological Survey is our sister agency. We both do the same types of work. We house the state's well logs. We have a public service lab that until 2006 offered free water samples for inorganics and metals to any well owner in Illinois. So we have about 30,000 water quality samples that we can use to talk about things in our state and those sorts of things. But the water survey has a long history. It was formed in 1896, and I always like to show this. I show this in most of the presentations I give. We have a lot of historical data in our files for all the communities in the state as well. This is a typhoid outbreak in Pana, Illinois in 1916, I believe. I can't quite see the number from here, but the water survey was started because of cholera and typhoid problems, and so we've been in the public health business for over 100 years, which is really cool. And going back through these files, one of my staff's been looking at all the historical stuff, and we found this and a whole bunch of other really cool information. But when communities in Illinois need help, they call us. We do groundwater investigations, groundwater modeling, and a lot of basic stuff for well owners. Well owners can call me, and they do all the time, and say, I just bought this property. How deep should I drill? What kind of groundwater can I expect? We can tell them what their water quality is going to be, all those sorts of things. So it's a great service, and we also get to do a lot of research and then outreach and education, which this program falls under. So I mentioned RCAP, the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, and we haven't really talked about RCAP much. There's been several speakers, obviously from RCAP in the 6 regions during this conference, but they're the lead on this project, as I mentioned before, and there are 6 regions, and if you don't know folks in your region, in Western RCAP is RCAC, MAP is the North Central, Great Lakes RCAP is around the Great Lakes, RCAP Solutions in the Northeast, which is where we're at today, Southeast RCAP or CERCAP in the Southeast, and then Communities Unlimited, which is kind of South Central. So they have staff in each of those regions that are doing these assessments. And I know in some cases there's relationships they've developed with either a state agency or a local county where when a well owner calls and they have a problem, RCAP folks will go out and do an assessment. But they also put on workshops for sanitarians and for well owners. And again, it's a cooperative program. It's a national program, which we're very fortunate to have. There's not anything really like it, I don't think, out there. So if you haven't met those folks, try to before you leave. Make a contact. There's a lot they can bring to the table. It's all federally funded, so it's all free, like this conference was. So it's a really good deal. As far as the site assessments, what I did is realizing that, I've been in the groundwater business and worked with well owners for over 30 years, but there's certainly a lot of things I don't know. And so through this program and through some other things we've done in the past, I reached out to what I felt were 13 experts from around the country, and we asked them if they would help us build this. And so really, they deserve all the credit for this because it was amazing what I don't know, what I found out I don't know. So this work group, it's hydrologists, drillers, sanitarians, regulators, and so in the end, it's a site assessment. It's you need to go out to the actual well site and take a look. You're doing a well assessment. You're looking for a log. So it's detailed. It might take 2 to 4 hours to actually do, but in some cases, that's the only way you're going to figure out what's going on with somebody's well. As many of you know, every well is different, and we've seen a lot of pictures of wells that are in different states of being a good well, and there's just a lot of those out there. And honestly, my own opinion is 90% of the problems we have with wells and water quality, especially with coliform and E. coli, are because of construction, and they're just old. So they're dug. We see, piston pump still and all those sorts of things. And then a geologic assessment to say, hey, are you in karst? Are you in a floodplain? All those sorts of things. But what it really does, it's a one-on-one opportunity to raise awareness with that well owner and show them what they don't know about their well and make recommendations to them right on the spot and say, oh, really this is a bad idea. We saw the dog yesterday or on Tuesday, and we see trees that are next to PVC wells where all of a sudden the casing's been breached and things like that. So it is an opportunity, and the RCAP folks have developed a lot of wherewithal to deal with all those problems. And the other thing that's nice is that we share information among all of us, and so it teaches us all when we run into some unusual situation. So these are the folks that put together this assessment tool, and I want to just highlight that again. I did it before, but really, and there's probably 6 or 7 of those people here today or at the conference, which is great. But without everyone's help, we wouldn't have come up with what we did. It's really comprehensive. And again, it's a tool that it isn't for someone who doesn't have at least some wherewithal with wells to use, because there's a lot of questions, things about backflow devices and a lot of complicated things that if you're not in the industry, I have to ask one of our drillers, Mark Layton, who's on this list here, he's my go-to whenever, and I know a lot of folks have a go-to that's either a driller or a treatment professional and stuff like that. That's what we need. That's where those partnerships are. So as far as our assessment program, it's written into the contract with EPA that RCAP folks will go out and do these assessments. So they've done, in the last several years, over 1,800 assessments around the country, and literally around the country, almost every state. And they're also being used by other organizations. I know, I think Billy Hicks is here from Cherokee Nation. We went out and they had a special request. We changed the assessment tool for their needs because they have a lot of cisterns, which aren't listed on our assessment tool. This is a private well program, but several others as well. So we've done over 40 workshops to teach sanitarians on how to use it, probably 900 or so attendees. And then what we've done recently is we've developed, it's a paper form, so that's pretty tedious. A lot of people are using tablets these days, so we've developed an iOS and Android version that, there's over 430 elements in the assessment is what we learned by doing the tablet version of these things. Individual elements that you can check or not check or write something about. So we are working on a guidebook. We have been for a long time, but it wasn't a deliverable until recently, which was to force us to actually do the guidebook. So hopefully that'll be available soon, and the whole idea behind that is to create a book that talks about each of those elements and gives people advice on how to answer those questions so that more people can use the tool. And actually I have a copy of the tool. It's out there on our booth. It's just in one of those, those stand-up things. And it's just a PDF. It's just black and white. You can see it there if you want to go out and look at it later. So our program's really evolving. It started out as a paper form, as I mentioned, and now we developed a fillable PDF version because, whenever everyone's writing, when you have 15 people who are using their own handwriting, guess how many are legible, right? So we've made a fillable PDF, which a lot of the RCAP folks are using, but now we've got this app as well, and it fills everything in for you that way, and you can type in what you want. It's a lot clearer because the idea behind the assessment tool is you walk through it with the well owner, you find their log, and you give them all that information back. So this isn't for us to collect a bunch of data about wells. It's to give the well owner so they have it. It's almost like, the folder you're supposed to keep for your car every time you have an oil change or do whatever. It's something they can put in their binder, which is one thing we recommend. I know the Water Systems Council does in their well owner handbook. You should keep all your material together and know all the history of your well. It's an investment, all those sorts of things. So as we move forward, RCAP is continuing to do these assessments, and they're working with other groups to do that. And we're funded currently through 2021, so that's the good news for us. So if you go to privatewellclass.org/app, you can download them there from your phone. Actually, you don't want to do it on your phone, I should mention. It's optimized for a tablet. So it really isn't recommended to do on your phone. I know some phones these days are getting pretty big, like mine, barely fits in my pocket, but it's better, it works better on a tablet. I have an Android tablet and it works great. So, and it spits out a PDF and an Excel file in the end. So what our hope is down the road is, like, if a county health department wants to use this, they can spit all that stuff out as Excel files, and they can look at the demographics of the wells in their area and have all that information. So this is just some screenshots of what the tool looks like. This is the iOS version, the Apple version, and it's got menus and it's got everything's there. It's pretty complicated. I had to work with the IT guys at the U of I campus, and it ended up taking us to do both of these almost 12 months, which was a lot more time than I'd planned, but it worked out in the end. So yeah, you fill it out. It's got, in the end, it spits out a PDF, as I mentioned, so that what you hand the well owner looks just like the paper version that we started with, and it's consistent. There's also an Android version. It actually, it was interesting because the IT folks, the guy we worked with, only had program on Android, and so the iOS version is what took all the time, but this is much cleaner, and it works really well. That's all I can say about it. And again, it'll save the files, you can go back to them, you can download either a PDF or an Excel file, and so it gives us a little more flexibility with the information we're collecting. And it's nice to be able to show it to the well owner. And what we've learned is, like we started out, there's a place on the assessment tool to draw a map of their site. So you can put the well, here's the gas tank, here's the barn. But everyone's using Google Earth these days. So all the RCAP folks, when you start looking at some of these finished assessments, they're all using Google Earth, and you can add all the stuff right to it, and it makes it better again for the well owner because they can visualize that and see how that all interplay works. So as far as the guidebook, we've been working on it. We'll have a complete draft ready by June 30th. And so it'll have examples of interesting things that we've uncovered, recommendations and what recommendations we think you should give, things like test every year, all that kind of stuff. And then also explain all the terms, because there's a lot of terms in there, like I said, about like backflow devices. In Illinois, there's 1 of 5 backflow devices you can use, but you have to on an outside spigot. And so all that stuff is in there, and I honestly don't know very little about it, so the guide's going to really help me. But the idea is, we talk about everyone's working locally, but we're trying to run a national program. Well, if we can add some consistency to all the things we do, it'll help all of us. If we're using the same terms, all those sorts of things where it's different around the country, that's one of our goals, is we're able to work with the national network through RCAP. And so adding some consistency to that helps well owners get one message. Because like if you go talk to a well owner and they've heard one thing from a treatment person and one thing from a driller and one thing from their geological survey, and they're all a little different, that confuses well owners, and they're not really sure what to believe or whatever. So, and we do run into that. So hopefully this helps with that effort. So the benefits to the well owners are really that it really educates them about their well. Most of the time they're asking questions, well, why do you need to know that? Or what's this got to do with my well? And so it's an opportunity then to say, well, here's how that interplay is. You've got an old dug well, it's shallow, blah, 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 blah. Also to promote best practices and encourage communication. That's probably the big one, encourage communication with local and state sources of information. People don't trust their local health department or their state health department, and in most of the country, they have no authority to tell them they can't shut down, they have to shut down their well. Now, I've found out that's not true everywhere. I ran into a local health district in Massachusetts where the health person there, the environmental health lead, said she's condemned 2 wells. I'm like, really? Because they have the authority to do that. They've created an ordinance, but it's very local. I think there's one county in New York where they require testing to the EPA standards, and like Rhode Island probably has the strictest standard for a home sale. If you test there and it fails, they use the home inspectors, or building inspectors can condemn a property, so they make you remediate before you sell. But that's the only state where that's the case. And so most of the time what we're telling people is, your county health department may say, hey, you've got, and this is a true story from Illinois, you've got 250 ppb of arsenic in your water. Your 6 children probably shouldn't be drinking this. But then it's up to them if they decide not to drink it or to add treatment or do whatever. So it's a chance at least so they can get more information and understand those things. And lastly here, increase awareness of issues and provide them with a record. Like I said, it's like the folder you're supposed to keep for your car. How many of you keep a folder for all your stuff for your car? I know some people do. Some don't. Most don't. But anyway, you should, right? Because it's a big investment. But for us, it's also a learning opportunity. I know for me, every time you go to a well, it's a little different from something you've already seen. Sometimes it's a lot different from what you've seen, and that's, you learn as you go. So the way to really develop experience with wells is actually to go out and visit them and work with well owners directly and understand how they're using it and what they're doing. But it gives you an opportunity to also to learn where all the sources of information are in your own area. We have county health departments who will call us and not realize that their state has all their logs online in some states and things like that. So it's an opportunity for us then to work with, or we had, we talked about doctors the other day. I had one of our health departments say, we had a person contact us who is about to go in for surgery and they're going to be immunocompromised when they get home, and they want to know what they should test for in their water. Well, no one wants to take that on because it's a health thing. I'm not a health professional. The county health department didn't want to take it on. So I reached out to 4 or 5 people I know around the country who are health professionals, and every one of them said the same thing. Tell them to talk to their doctor. So that's why talking to our doctors is so important, because one, as Frida pointed out, that's who people trust, and 2, no one is willing to give advice like that because it's a liability, right? And we shouldn't. So we really have to make an effort to reach out to doctors, and especially in areas where they're working with folks who might be on private wells. So it's things like that that we can learn from and as we go. So it helps you understand where logs are and tell people 70% have been tested, all those things. Plus the experience in the field, I mentioned that before, that's really one of the best things that you get out of doing these assessments, because you keep running into things you've never seen before. Invariably. So I'm going to talk about some examples. So the first thing here, lagoons can be used as private wastewater systems. Anybody know how many states that's actually true in? Is it true in your state? Raise your hand. Yeah, Maryland. Yeah, Illinois, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania. Yeah. So I didn't know that. We're developing this assessment tool, and Sharon Skipton from Nebraska says, well, we're listing different septic types. She says, well, you don't have lagoons on there. I'm like, lagoons, really? There's one in Tazewell County in Illinois, because Evelyn Navier from Tazewell County is on our work group, and she's like, yeah, we have one in Tazewell County. I didn't know that. So it's interesting, the things you learn and how it's different around the country. So I can't imagine having a lagoon for my septic system, but you just never know the situation, and I'm sure if you see the situation, there's probably a good reason for it. And in some cases, maybe it's elevated and it's karst and it's shallow bedrock or whatever. But also, again, as I mentioned earlier, regular conversations with RCAP and the regions and the things they uncover really help us learn from each other, and it gives up a better product to the well owner. And so, there really are a lot of different instances around the country. I know out east, they've ran into wells that are well over 100 years old, and they're still in use. It's just really interesting. And also, some of the partnerships we've been able to develop. I know at the other conference, we had the Department of Health in Tennessee talk about springs, but Communities Unlimited is actually working with them, and when they go out and do an investigation, DOH is collecting samples, and the RCAP person from Communities Unlimited is doing the assessment. So the well owner gets more. So Tennessee has a grant from CDC to do the testing. So it's free to the well owner, and not only did they get a free water test, but they also got an assessment done to tell them what's going on. It's funny though, especially with springs, people are very, I think Jeff alluded to it the other day in his talk in New York. You take the pipe away, and a few days later there's another one there. That's what I've learned from people who deal with springs all the time, is that there are so many people who swear by them. And if you go watch the talk from Tennessee about springs in our 2017 conference and see some of the amounts of E. coli or Giardia or whatever that are in these things, and people are drinking it anyway, it just boggles your mind. So as far as, and other things that have happened, like in Rhode Island, they're a small state and they have a small staff, and so RCAP's been able to go out when they don't have the opportunity to go out and actually work with a well owner one-on-one, then Jim Starber or whoever can go out and meet with that person and kind of support what Rhode Island Department of Health is doing. So it's really cool. And again, every well is different. And here's one example. Jesse Campbell sent me this picture and says, "What the heck is this?" There's a pressure gauge on it right next to the well. This is like a big water tank with a hole in the bottom of it. And so I emailed Mark Layton, who is a driller locally for us, and he sent me this diagram back. It's a whole system and I'd never seen that before. This was in Iowa, I believe. And so, it was really interesting to see that. And we've come across several since then. I'm sure Jesse's seen many more than several since then. But also, I just took some pictures from one of Jesse's presentations. We worked together a lot. And just some of the different things you see, it's amazing what people do and how they don't understand what being safe is about. So, in the upper right here is an old piston pump. We did a study in Illinois where we were trying to evaluate how many wells might be impacted by a regional water supply that was being planned. They were going to start pumping like 18 million gallons a day. And so we surveyed all the well owners in 9 townships in a rural area. We came up with 1,708 wells. We didn't have logs for 788 of them, which is probably better than most states could do. But we had 40 piston head pumps still that were still in use out of those 1,708, which is amazing. And sometimes well owners surprise you with the information they have. And this is a good example. So this is from our lab, but this guy had bought a house. It's in the Muhammad Aquifer, which is a large aquifer in central Illinois, sand and gravel aquifer. And so he had his well tested, and I think all I'm showing here, there's going to be 3 slides, and they're all from his 2015 sample. But he sampled his well about every 10 years and had it done at our lab. And so the things to note here are that what we usually ask people to do is to collect a raw sample from an outside spigot before any kind of treatment or through premise plumbing, and then one at their kitchen tap. So as a groundwater scientist, I'd like to know what the groundwater is as well, right? So our lab kind of does that. We usually collect 2 samples. And so here, this is the raw water sample, and you can see the hardness is I think around 350. The sodium's like 27 or something like that, and the pH is around 8. So this is the sample from outside after it ran for a while. And then the second one is after it went through a filter and a softener. And so you can see the softener's doing its job. Now the hardness is down to point something. But look at the sodium. It went from 29 or whatever it was up to 198, I think. And so, someone else talked during the conference here about the unintended effects of things like sodium if you're on a low sodium diet. But then he also added an RO unit, and it takes almost, the less than signs mean it's below detection, but it lowered the pH to 6.3. And so that's an unintended consequence as well, right? But that's right at the tap. But if you're in a different aquifer where the pH didn't start out at 8 and you're using RO, you need to be aware that you may be making your water corrosive, right? So it was really interesting. He had all this information. We did an assessment, and it just, the things you learn was the point there. So this all takes many local partners. That was the theme of our last conference. We've really seen that here today or this week as well. And that's really, every time you want to give a presentation somewhere that's not at home, you need to find a partner to have a location. You need to find, if anybody else wants to speak, you may ask the local geologist or the state, like their geological survey or whatever. But it all is about developing these partnerships. And, the RCAP folks have probably 200 partners now in our program where they can go to. I know Jim mentioned several, like the Connecticut Environmental Health Association. And it gives us a chance to, also vet what we're doing and make sure that everyone's on the same page and agrees. But, the idea, again, is that we'd hope that we're giving a consistent message nationwide, because that's part of the problem. It really is. So the last thing I want to do is acknowledge RCAP and the EPA. Without their support, this conference wouldn't have happened and won't happen in the future. So it's why we're able to be here today. And what we're trying to do is a national outreach and education program. So if we can support what you're doing in any way, contact us, either me or the regions or RCAP National Office. And they can hook you up with folks that are in your state or in your area who would be glad to work with you. And so what we hope is that, the bar's here for well owners, and we all know well owners who don't have a clue. We were talking in a hallway about someone who called their city water supply and said, hey, I don't have water today. And when the operator, this is an operator told me this story, when he looked at the maps, he realized that their water lines are on the other side of the road, and the people on that side of the road where this person called from is actually on a private well. So he drove out to their house, and their well's right in the front yard, and these folks didn't know that was their water well. And that's the level of difference where, we have one guy who's sampling his well on his own and testing all this stuff, and we have another one who doesn't know anything about their well. And if we can raise that awareness and help people understand that they need to be concerned. The only other example I'll give you is my dad. I grew up on a dug well 14 feet deep. When it rained, we had muddy water, and that's how I grew up. And if you ask my dad, he would say our water's better than city water because it doesn't have chemicals in it. City puts chemicals in their water. That's bad. And that was his belief, always. We grew up on a farm, so that's what he always did believe. So anyway, that's what I have, except I do want to point out that we have this brochure. It's out on our table, and we give these out to anyone who's interested. There's a place on the back where you can put a label. We sent this out through NEHA, through their website, or through their, NEHA, the National Environmental Health Association, represents about 15,000 sanitarians around the country. And so they're a partner on our grant. A version of our private well class is on their webpage, and sanitarians can go take each of the 10 lessons for free and get a CEU for each one. So they work with us a lot, and we developed this little brochure that talks about best practices for your well and has a link to our website. But there's a place on the back for anyone to put their logo. So we sent this out through our newsletter and through NEHA's and asked people if they would be interested in having copies of these. We'll send them to you for free. We've sent out 45,000 of them to over 300 organizations so far. So take a look at it. It's out on the table, and if you're interested in it, our email address and phone number is on the back. And again, we'll send it to you for free. It does promote our program, but it's also free. So it's really a good tool. And I also have out there, and it's coming apart at the staple, but this is the entire private well class. And we don't give out paper copies of the class. You take it online, or you get a PDF sent to you. But if you want to thumb through it, I'll put it back out on the table, and you can see what's in there if you're not familiar with it. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have. Got about 2 minutes. I don't have my Slido up. Okay. Oh boy, I'll go to the second one since it was just up there. As far as endorsing which Android tablet, I don't know if I could tell you which one. It's a really nice one because work bought it for me. But it's I just bought it last year, and I don't have it with me. I only use it for the assessment stuff. I don't use a tablet always. I'm 55. So I don't know. I don't have it with me, but I know it's from Samsung. So, as is my phone, and they're great. So, does your outside spigot samples tend to yield more frequent back T positives? Sampling protocols to avoid those using outside faucets. So here's the deal. For our lab, and I don't know why, because I've pushed for this for 20 years, we test for inorganics and metals. We don't test for bacteria. So I can't tell you if that is the case. It's really frustrating. My son rented a house out in the country 5 miles south of Homer, Illinois. He has an old dug well. I pushed him for 2 months to get it tested, and he didn't do it. So I went and I had to go get a sample kit from the county health department, and I paid $50 for them to send a sample to Springfield to get it tested just for bacteria. And then I took a sample to our lab, and now that isn't free anymore. It was $65, but it's all the things on that list, which is a really a bargain for Illinois well owners. And so his was positive for coliform. But to answer your question, I'm sure that's the case. You know, they're a real source of, typically, of outside spigot sample, especially, you know, freezing and thawing, all those other issues. And I'm not an expert on those things as far as backflow devices and all that. So just to clarify, there is an app and a fillable PDF, right? Correct. You can certainly just use a PDF, and some of the people prefer that. Even the RCAP regional folks, we developed the app because a few people really wanted it, and we thought it's just another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, but a lot of people are still using the fillable PDF. It works really well. Yeah. So, yeah. Is there a login process? Can you see other assessments? Are there any privacy issues? There are no privacy issues because we don't provide the data to anyone but the well owner. So the only people that see those are the person who fills out the assessment and our internal program and the well owner. So part of, you know, when you do work like this, especially for the federal government, there's OMB work and there's, you know, there's through the university, or what's it called? Kelsey, what was it you guys were talking about yesterday? Kelsey in here? She left already. Yeah. IRB, Institutional Review Board. So if we want to use that data for anything, show it in a talk or do whatever, you have to get permission for using subjects and all that sort of stuff. So the only way to avoid that is to say you're not going to and you can't. And so it's actually, we had to write into our proposal to EPA that we weren't going to use this data in that way. So, but that's for us. So if somebody else takes the assessment and they use it on their own, then they're on their own to deal with those things. So we don't share them with anybody, and we don't highlight the data we get from it. We use it internally, and that's okay. Does that answer your question? Because there certainly are privacy issues. All right. Thank you very much.